Okay, so technological entrepreneurship is establishment of a new technology venture. Every word is important. You have to establish it. It has to be new. It has to do with technology, and it is a venture. Some win, many lose. We will discuss it later on. What do we do with people who do not succeed in their first effort? So this is it. Now, why is technological entrepreneurship important for the well-being of societies, countries, and the world? I will tell you in a few words, and then I'll show you a few pictures that will illustrate that. If you look at the world today, you see that on the one hand, there are no wars between countries today. Peaceful world. Not so. There are many wars inside countries, tribal wars in the Middle East, in Africa, in other places, tribal wars. And if you try to see what's common to all these countries with tribal wars, one thing, poverty. These are poor, disenchanted people. Rich people don't fight, they're happy. So, how is it related? Well, number one, technological entrepreneurship can solve some of the problems of the world. Let me illustrate to you something about demographic pyramid. This is the demographic pyramid. What is it? Number one, it looks like a pyramid. Okay, this is why it's called demographic pyramid. On this axis, you have the number of people. Number of people. Boys, girls. Age 0 to 4, age 5 to 9, and so on and so forth. As you go up in the age group, there are less and less people. And when you reach 100 years, there are only a few females left. Men died. That's a fact. So, this looks like a pyramid. It means that every several years we have more and more and more and more people. It means that the average number of children per woman is above 2.1. To sustain a stable society, you need 2.1 children per woman, then it is stable. If you have less, it's a different story. But this is a demographic pyramid of Israel. In Israel, we have about 2.65 children per woman, so we are a growing society. Now, I will not talk about Hong Kong, but I will give you an example of a country like Hong Kong, whom I know a little better. That country is South Korea, but Hong Kong demographic pyramid looks the same. So number one, it doesn't look like a pyramid. You see, there is growth, and then population started to shrink. There are less and less and less and less children per woman. Average number of children per woman in South Korea is 1.25. Now imagine, if you have one child per woman on the average, then every generation will be half of the previous generation. Now, in my lifetime, I knew my grandfather, I know my grandchildren, that's 5 generations. And if every generation would be half, we would disappear. People will disappear within a period of several decades if you don't have enough children. So this is what happens in South Korea. It's an aging population. You have the same problem. In the Far East, there are many countries with the same problem. In Europe, they have the same problem. Average number of children per woman in Europe is about 1.5. China, 1.7. I assume that here it's also about 1.7. No? Less? Okay. So that I don't know, but China, 1.7. So who will work when the young people will become old? Who will support the economy? Now, maybe Taiwan and Hong Kong do not have this problem because China will fill in the gaps. But other countries have a very serious problem. South Korea have a very serious problem. So it's a problem all over the world. And on the other hand, there are countries in which the number of children per woman is very high. You go to Africa and look at Niger. It's a large country in Africa. Average number of children per woman is 7. Average number of children per woman is 7. There are women with 12, 15 children. They are poor, they cannot support their societies, and they have just about the same problem, but it is now. Okay, enough of that. This is the decline of population in South Korea. 6 children per woman in the 50s, 1.25 now. There were several reasons for this decline, and it's common around the world. Number one was government policy. One family, one child policy. Not only in China, also in South Korea and many other countries. There was a fear that if you have 6 children per woman, there will be explosion of population. Government said 1 family, 1 child. And people listened. But this was only one factor. A major factor is urbanization. People moved from the village to the cities. While you can raise many children in the village, you cannot do that in the city. It's expensive, there is not enough room, and less children just because of that. And factor number 3 is education for women. Women now want career. All the women sitting here have careers. And when a woman has a career, and when the country does not give good support for families with several children, then women said, one is enough. I'm going to work. I want to develop my career just as you do, my dear husband. Okay. Education for women and career for women, very good. We don't want to change that. Urbanization, very good. We don't want to change it. But government policies can be changed. And government should realize that decline in population is a major, major problem, and they have to do something about it. Now, when I say government, that does not necessarily mean the central government. It can mean province government, it can be city government, it can be any government. And things can be done. Daycare centers for small children will enable women to go to work after several months and leave their child in a safe place that they can trust. This can be open. Maternity leave, long maternity leave for the mother and maybe for the father. This can be done with salary. Governments can do something about it. It takes time, but once you realize that it's a problem, it can be done. I did it again. Okay. Okay. So what can we do? We can do 2 things. Number one, governments can encourage larger families by providing support, by encouragement, and this can be done. But this is not the topic. The topic is we can foster technological entrepreneurship. And this is the subject of my talk. How do we create a society which is innovative and entrepreneurial? How can we do that? And I can tell you that in Israel, we had that paradigm shift in the minds of young people from socialist country as it was created to entrepreneurial and modern capitalist country. Okay. Building sustainable economy requires development of human ingenuity. And I will be very happy if these lights are off. And you will be happy too. Off lights on top here. Aha. Okay, so I repeat, building sustainable economy requires development of human ingenuity. Countries in the past relied on natural resources. Rich countries had oil. Rich countries had mines. Rich countries had minerals in the ground. Rich country has forestry. Rich countries robbed nature. And everything was all right. But these resources dwindle. We have less and less of that. And now it is realized by almost everybody that the best natural resource is human ingenuity. You are the best natural resource, your minds. And nowadays, rich countries are countries of entrepreneurs, countries of people that think, that innovate. Aha, the opposite side. Okay. So how can we do that? There are several things that we need to do. Number one, good basic education for all. For all. Not just the people in the capital of the country, but also the people in the villages. You know, the people who live in the capital of a country have one child per family. The people in the villages have 3, 4. These are the people that will work when you will retire. If they are not educated, they will clean the streets, and they will have less salary and less income tax, and that's bad for the economy. You want them to be educated. So the emphasis is on this word, all. Everybody should have good basic education. And good basic education is a contract between the country and the people. And the contract has 2 ways. The government should make it possible for everybody to get good education, and the parents are obliged to send their children to school. It's 2-way, right? Okay, this is number 1. Number 2, good engineering and science education. Because it is the engineers and the scientists open new startups. These are the people that create the new economy of countries. So we should have good engineering and science education, and this is what you do in this university. You see, the students in this university are about 5 years before they can open a startup. It's a short distance in time. In a few years, they can open a startup. You should teach them how to do that in this university, as we do at the Technion, and I'll tell you how we do that. Number 3, government policy and support for entrepreneurship. And in Israel, we have very strong government commitment and support for entrepreneurship in terms of institutes that help young entrepreneurs open startups in the form of financial support for startups. I will describe it in more details later on in my talk. Free market economy. Well, it's obvious for you in Hong Kong that free market economy is basis for trade around the world. It's also natural for Israel to have free market economy, but it is not the case all over the world. Free market economy. And last but not least, no corruption. Corruption kills entrepreneurship. No corruption. And I was very happy to see that President Xi of China declared war on corruption about a year ago or so. I was very, very happy to hear that. It is so important for the future of China. And it's also important for the future of every other country who is plagued with corruption. Okay, but let's say that we have all this. Okay, we have good basic education, good engineering and science education, government policy and support, free market economy, no corruption, like in Hong Kong. But we still don't have entrepreneurship. So what else is necessary? Okay, so this is just the basis. That's not enough. So, but that may not be enough. Also needed is development of entrepreneurial spirit and knowledge. These are two different things, but they are linked together. Knowledge of entrepreneurship means tell people how to open a startup and how to have a successful startup that will survive. This is knowledge. Where are the stepping stones? Where are the stumbling blocks? Don't do this, do this. What is the market? How can we succeed in our startup? This is knowledge. A spirit is something much more elusive. A spirit develops over time. And it takes maybe tens of years until a spirit of entrepreneurship engulfs a whole country. And this is the situation in Israel. When I started to teach entrepreneurship, and I will tell you about it soon, we had maybe 5 very successful entrepreneurs in the country. We didn't have the words in Hebrew for entrepreneurship at that time. There was one venture capital fund in the whole country at that time. 1986 is when I started. And yet, over time, because more and more people start to talk about entrepreneurship, and it comes from the universities, it comes from the students, this is where it starts. You develop a spirit of entrepreneurship. And when that happens, then you have a very good chance to succeed because young people think positively about entrepreneurship, about taking risks, and about thinking about new ideas. It's everywhere. Look at what happens in the United States. If you look at what happens in the United States, you will see that there are centers of entrepreneurship. It's not everywhere. It's in the Silicon Valley. It's in the Boston area. It's in the South, near Texas and so on. There are pockets. And they're all of them linked to good universities. All of them. It comes from the university. So entrepreneurship in Hong Kong should come from here. You are the people that should do that. Remember that. Okay. So, born to be a technological entrepreneur, some say that to become a successful entrepreneur, one has to be born with it. Okay, I mean, if your father has a successful business factory, you manufacture things, and your father talk, and your mother maybe too, talk at home about business every dinner, then you will become an entrepreneur because you are in the spirit of entrepreneurship. But how many of you has a father or mother who has an entrepreneurial business? Very, very few, right? Does it mean that you cannot become entrepreneurs? Not at all. Because entrepreneurship can be taught. Like everything else, everything can be taught. It's not a pie in the sky. There are rules, there are ways to succeed, and this can be taught. And every university, technological university, should do that. Because your students are almost there. In 5 years, they can open a startup. Okay. Now, can we teach technological entrepreneurship? Yes, definitely. Yes, we can, and we should. This is something like every other subject. We can teach it, and we should. Okay, so who teaches entrepreneurship today? If you go to the United States of America, and you go to the Ivy League universities, and you ask them, do you teach technological entrepreneurship? They will say, are you kidding? We are the best of the best. we are number one. Very nice. But where do you teach it? What do you mean? In our MBA programs. Right. And who are the people that go to MBA programs? Accountants? Lawyers? Aha. These people don't open startups. They can manage startups. Yes, very well maybe. They can be the best managers of startups because they came from Ivy League universities, but these are the people that do not open startups. So if you open a startup, and you start to grow, hire one of them. But these are not the people, usually, these are not the people that open startups. So this is not the way to do it. So, okay, we'll skip that. It is the engineers, biologists, MDs, doctors, right? Scientists and computer experts that start new high-tech companies. These are the people that we should teach how to open a startup. And you know what? They are here in your university. These are the people that you teach. So all these, we should teach how to open a startup. So whom and where should we teach? Not only in universities. In Israel, we start teaching in high schools. There are many programs to teach science, to teach the science of entrepreneurship or how to open a startup in high school. And it's amazing. These programs encourage young children, 16, 17 maybe, to go through the process of registering a company, inventing a product, make the product, do the market survey. Sometimes these are very simple products that they think that people will want. And they go in the street and they show a model and they ask people, will you buy this product? If I make it for you, how much money will you pay for it? 10 shekels, 20, maybe 25? Is it worth? All right? This is called market survey. And they go through the process. And they are infected by the bug of entrepreneurship at a very early age. So these are the people in high school. It's not all over high schools, but it's in many high schools. And of course, in universities, I come back to you. Engineers, scientists, MDs. This is the shortest way to the startup, right here. And don't forget technicians in vocational schools. These are the people that can make things. These are the people that can work in the hand, operate the NC machines, and they can make things. They can open a startup, and they can make things, and they can sell them, and they can be successful. So all of them should be exposed to the art of entrepreneurship. Now I'll tell you about my class at the Technion that I started in 1986. 1986 was an important year in my life because I became a full professor that year. A full professor. And, you know, when I was a student at the Technion, by the way, I did all my degrees at the Technion. When I was a student at the Technion, the spirit of the Technion delivered the following message. The spirit says, you will be so good that when you graduate, everybody will want to hire you. And I said, well, that's wonderful. But what if I want to open my own technology business? How do I do that? The Technion did not teach that. I asked Professor, why don't you teach me what is the patent law? What is a patent? What is the law? What is a company? How do I register a company? What is marketing? What is market survey? What all these words that I hear and nobody teaches me? Technion said, oh, we are too busy. We don't teach that. Okay. 1986, when I became a full professor, I started a class of entrepreneurship. And I want to take you to those days because there are several anecdotes that are on the verge of being funny, but quite useful. I had to attract as many people as I could to my class. This is because I don't know who is going to be an entrepreneur. What student, male or female, is going to be an entrepreneur? How do I know? So I want to infect as many students as possible. Now, you know, as a university professor and students, that when you start a new class in your university, it appears like 5 lines in the catalog. And there are 500 classes like this. So who will know about my class? Maybe 10 students, and next year 20? I said, no. I want to attract hundreds of students. Now, how do you do that? And I said to myself, you're going to teach entrepreneurship? Be one. Find a way to advertise your class. Aha, challenge. I called to my office the head of the Students' Union and said the following, young man, you have a weekly journal that you publish. The name was Kuli at the time, Kuli, somebody that carries a rickshaw. And he said, okay, that's great. I said, I have a class which I start, which is not like any other class. It is for your future. It is something very special, which is, excuse me, bullshit. But so is advertisement. And he said, that's wonderful. How can I help you? I said, you have this weekly journal. I want you to publish my class. And he said, of course, I will do that. What do you want me to write? I said, you will decide. He came the next day, showed me the center page. You want to become entrepreneurs? You don't know how? Come to this new class. And he published it every week all summer. I opened the class for 600 students because the largest hall of the Technion, the Churchill Auditorium, had 600 seats. So 600 students registered, and no more could register. 800 students came to the class. 800 students. They sat on the stairs. It was very dangerous. They were hanging from the windows. They were so interested in it. And the class was a smashing success from day one. Okay, so this was the beginning. I was very happy. The class continues now for 29 years, year after year after year. And by now, I have about 10,000 engineers and scientists who walk about in Israel with a bug of entrepreneurship implanted in their minds. 10,000 for a country your size in population of engineers and scientists is a huge number. And many, many of them open startups. Let me give you one example. The first speaker, they're all invited speakers, by the way, the people that I bring to my class. The first speaker this year is the son of the president of Intel Israel. And this son took my class several years ago, and he said to his father, and his father told me, I was going to be a bench engineer in a company, and when I took this class, I changed my mind, and he opened the company, and he comes to tell about his company now to my students, graduate from my class, and there are many of them. This is just one example. Okay, so this is not 27 years, 29 years now. How does it work? Number one, it's open to all Technion students. Why am I telling you this? Because I want you to do the same. And after you do the same, you can improve. But start to do what I did. What? It's a good example of success story. And then you can improve. So it's open to everybody. Why everybody? Because everybody can become an entrepreneur. Aeronautical engineer, mechanical engineer, electronic engineer, chemist, physicist, MD. 300 to 600 students in the class, depending on the hall that I'm using. All lectures given by invited speakers, and these are divided into 3 groups. Group number 1, successful entrepreneurs. The first speaker in the first year was a man named Steph Wertheimer. He was, in my mind, the father of entrepreneurship in the country. Uzziah Galil was second. Yuda Bronitsky was third. At least one person knows these names here. Now, I went to talk to Steph Wertheimer, the first speaker. I went to his factory in a remote place in the north of the country, met him, and described to him what I want him to do, and he agreed to come. I will not detail the conversation. That was quite hard. He's not a simple person. But he came and gave a talk. And then the second one was Uzziah Galil, the man who started the electronic industry in Israel. He was number 2. Yuda Bronitsky started a company named Ormat, who produces power production facilities that you can put in remote areas without manning them. So later on, when I called somebody and I said, I want you to come to talk to my class, and they didn't hear about it yet, they said, yeah, well, who was there? I mean, I said, well, Steph was here, and Uzziah was, oh, I'm coming. So you have to do it right, to start with the right people. And in Israel, the situation is that I can pick up the phone and call anybody, and he will come, or she will come to talk to my students, anybody. It's a very open society. There are not strata in our society. And I can remember over 29 years, there was one person who refused to come to talk to my class. And I remember him vividly because there was only one such person. And I can tell you as an anecdote that I don't invite the same people every year. I invite them every few years if they are good speakers. But so one of these important people gave a lecture, and the next year his secretary calls me and said, Danny, when, by the way, do you want my boss to talk? And he's not on my list. Well, I said, this year a little bit different, but next year, and so on and so on. Also, another anecdote. I prepared some funds to pay for their expenses. Maybe they took a taxi or something. But when they started to come with their private helicopters, I understood that that was not really necessary. Okay, anyway. So successful entrepreneurs. The second group are new startup entrepreneurs. These are like the son of the president of Intel. These are people who are fighting now to make their story a success story. And they tell the students their difficulties, their successes, and so on and so forth. And the students can identify with the young people. But they can also identify with the very successful entrepreneurs, and I'll tell you why. Because all the people that I mentioned started from nothing. They didn't have anything when they started. And the student can say, okay, yes, he didn't have anything, I don't have anything, I can do what they did. These are role models. We invite role models. And group number 3 are professionals. So who are the professionals? I bring a lawyer to tell the students what is a limited company and why you should register a limited company and not take the financial burden on your narrow shoulder. Put the company between you and the customers. I bring in somebody that talks about market survey. He tells them that they must be experts in their market and keep an eye on the market every day. They should be experts in their market, because if they don't know the market, they have no chance. You have to know your market. Who is the competition? What are the developments? Which are the directions? What do the customers want? All right? This is market survey. I bring somebody who talks about marketing. When should you start marketing? When you have a product in your hand? Oh, no. Long before. Long before, start marketing. So that when you have a product, it can go directly to the market. Another question that comes up. When can you start selling? When your product is perfect? Yes, if you are Mercedes-Benz. But you are not. You sell, then fix. You need cash flow. Start selling as soon as you have something to sell. If there are problems, fix them. When you are a startup, don't be perfect. Just start moving. And I bring in the patent officer of the country that tells the young people what is a patent, IP, how to protect it, and so on and so forth. So these are the professionals. Okay, an invited speaker, entrepreneur, should provide tips, tell stories, and give advice from his or her experience. Tell stories. People love stories, and they remember them. People remember stories. And if a story has a moral, wonderful. Then people remember it. People learn by hearing actual stories. These are true stories. And some of them are extremely interesting. How people started. How did they find the first market, and so on. Okay, so these entrepreneurs are role models. This, I marked it because it's very important. Role model is somebody that somebody to follow. Somebody that the students can say, I want to be like him or like her. And I can do that. These are role models. And so it's important to invite role models to follow. If the audience can identify with a speaker, can believe that they can follow his or her footsteps and become a success story, we have achieved our goal. Okay, so what can an experienced invited entrepreneur talk about? They can talk about how they started. They can talk about difficulties he or she faced and the way he or she overcame them. What were the financial resources? You hear such interesting stories about financial resources you won't believe it. Where did people get their first money? Wonderful story. How he or she found proper partners. How did they find customers? What is the company culture? Company culture? Oh, yes. Company culture is very, very important. You have to have principles in your company, and you have to stick to them. And I have a story to tell you, but we'll skip it for the sake of time, how important company culture is. Principles, have principles. Okay. Cultural consideration. We are here in the Far East. And many people in this part, but also in Europe, have fear of failure. People are afraid to fail, and therefore they will not open a startup. Because failure in certain countries is a shame on you, on your family, on the society, on the emperor, God forbid. Our message is the following. Fear of failure. Our message is, I'll tell you later, it doesn't come now. Our message is, failure, okay. Start again. We emphasize it time and again. If you had a business, technological business, and you have failed, I believe in you more than I believe in somebody who is just starting because you are an experienced entrepreneur. You went through the stages. You spent 2-3 years learning how to open a startup. And yes, you failed because many fail and whatever happened. But you are an experienced entrepreneur. I will invest in you rather than in somebody who is just starting. Failure, okay, start again. Okay. So government, what can government do? Government can open incubators. Government can do partnership with VC funds. I want to tell you the story of the history of VC funds, venture capital funds, in Israel. When I started my class in 1986, there was one venture capital fund in Israel, headed by Dan Tolkovsky, ex-chief of the Air Force. I invited him to talk about venture capital fund. He came, gave a talk. Second year, I was looking for somebody else. Still there was one. I invited him again. He came again and spoke. The third year, still there was one. By now we are towards the end of the 80s. I called him up and he said, okay, Danny, that's enough. Take my son. He works with me. He's an expert. So I took his son. And then the government of Israel did something very, very smart. Program called Yozma. You know about it. Government of Israel said the following. Hey guys, venture capital from the world, come invest in Israel. You invest 60%, we are partners. We invest 40%. The government became partners. They took 40% of the risk. Immediately, there was a glut of money flowing into the country. In 1 year, there were billions of dollars to be invested. The end of the story, and it continued and continued up till today. But the end of the story is even more interesting. After several years, the government said, okay, our presence is not needed anymore. Money comes anyway. So they pulled out of the partnership. The total sum that the government invested was only $100 million. They pulled out $140 million in a few years. I wish I could do that. Right? Not only did they start the process that brought in many, many venture capital funds, but they also made money in the process. This was one of the wise things that our government did at the time. And the year was at the end of the 80s. Governments can form chief scientist office in every ministry. In Israel, we have chief scientist office in every ministry. Chief scientist is a scientist who can talk to the ministry and the minister and can talk to the scientists because they have common language. This is the link between the scientists and the ministry. Government can support industrial, innovative R&D in startups. Many governments do that. In the United States, you have SBIR, called Small Business Innovative Research. They give you money for a good startup, good proposal. If you are successful, you don't have to pay back. If you fail, you also don't have to pay back. It's a gift. In Israel, if you fail, you don't have to pay back. But if you succeed, you have to return that amount of money gradually from the profit of your sales. All right? But there is government support, financial support for good proposals, both of private people and in the industry, because there's also a lot of intrapreneurship within the company. We'll talk about it in a minute. Signed bilateral agreements and support bilateral funds. Okay, this is clear. Form and support instruction and advice center for emerging startups. In every city in Israel, we have an office, and every entrepreneur can go there and seek advice for a problem that he or she has. Sometimes they have to pay a little bit for it. Sometimes it's given for free. And these offices are manned by very experienced people who can really give answers to startup people. Okay, VC funds. I want to talk a little bit about venture capital funds. I have a problem with venture capital funds. I'll tell you what it is. The good point is that venture capital fund, I'll tell you how they work for the students among you. There's a person who said, hey guys, I know how to invest in new startups. Give me money, I will invest it for you. I will take part of it for me. But after so many years, 5, 7 years, I will pay you back the money that you invested and the profit. And I will invest in 10 companies, and I can tell you that on the average, 7 of them will fail, but the 3 will succeed, and they will make a lot of money. So you will make a lot of money by this investment. Okay, so what's the problem with it? The problem is that the venture capital fund want the money back to pay back the investors in 5 or 7 years, and that may not be enough time for the startup to grow. And they tend to sell the startup, to sell the IP. Now, if the company that buys keeps the startup alive, that's good. But some of them just take the IP, fire everybody, and disappear. And that's bad. So I ask the venture capital funds everywhere in the world, reinvest in the companies. Think about it. The people who gave you the money to be invested, most of them don't need that money now. They have deep pockets. Reinvest it. They will make more money because now it's invested in very successful companies. Don't destroy the startup. This is the problem I have with venture capital funds. I'm told in the United States by venture capital people that the rich people there ask them, don't give me the money now. I don't want the money now. They don't want to pay taxes on it. Okay, so I don't want the money now. Just keep going, keep growing. That's okay. It's okay. What will I do with the money? Invest it in another company. Why? Okay, so this is the problem with venture capital fund. So we'll skip it. So where should we go to seek funding for our startup? This is a major question that people ask, and there are several answers. Answer number 1, strategic partners. Now, strategic partners come at the second stage usually when your company starts to have a product and they sell. So what is a strategic? Let's say that you have a small company here in Hong Kong, and you can make something that sells around the world. But you're small, and you cannot develop world market. So why don't you join a large company, and your product will fit into their product line, and they will provide you with a market. They will sell for you. You will produce it, they will sell, and you form a strategic partnership this way. And this is very good because the company will also give you some advices and tell you what they can sell. So please change your product a little bit to fit their standards, and then everybody will be happy. So this is one. Angels. Angels are people with deep pockets. Why? It means they have a lot of money. Why do they have a lot of money? Because recently they had an exit. They sold their company. So they have $200 million in each one of their two pockets. And they want to invest it in something. And they would like to invest it in something that they understand in. So if somebody sold a company that produces some kind of solar cell generators or whatever, then he or she would like to invest in something similar to that. And these angels are wonderful because they provide not only the money, but good advice. They are experts. They know the market. They know the people in the world. They will create all these contacts for you. That's excellent. All right, angels. Bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is opening a company without money. How can I have, let's say that I develop a product, but I need somebody to write me a computer program to run the product. How can I have somebody write a program for me without paying him or her? Very simple. Give them something of value. And that something of value is part of your company. You have a company, okay? Make them partners. Give them part of your company. And remember, right now, the value of your company is 0. Be generous about this 0. Give them good part. And if the company is successful, everybody will be happy. Right? There will be money for everybody. Everybody will be happy. So these are bootstrapping. And VC funds are last on my list. So what money we should not use? Is there any money that we should not touch? The students ask, what? Isn't all money the same? No, no, no. Number 1, never use your own money. You are not rich enough to have a startup in most cases. Don't sell your apartment. Don't sell your car because you are liable to lose your apartment, car, wife, and children in the process. Don't do that. Number 2, do not take money from relatives or friends because it's a good chance that you lose your relatives and you lose your friends in the process. Don't do that. Do what I said before, all right? Okay. So I want to say a word about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is something that has to do with organizational character, the type of organization. There's one company in Israel named RAD, R-A-D, opened by 2 brothers, Zisapel brothers, Technion graduates. And they are a good example of entrepreneurship. So what does it mean? It means the following. And here is the question. Let's say that a bench engineer that works in a group, has a good idea. What can he or she do? Can he call the boss and ask him, I want to talk to you about an idea that I have? Or does he or she have to go to the group leader, and he will go to his group leader, and ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, and after 7 stages, the idea will come to the boss. Now, if he has to turn to his boss, then the boss will say, that's a very good idea. I have a very good team. And he will go to his boss and say, my team, not that engineer, my team has this idea. And the boss will say, wow, that's very good. Yeah, my division is really very good. And he will go to his boss and say, my division came up with this idea. By the time it reaches the top, nobody knows the name of that engineer. So what will that engineer do? Nothing. He will not talk about his ideas because he knows that it will be lost. Another option is engineer has an idea. He will call the secretary of the main office and say, I have a good idea. I want to talk to the boss. Secretary will say, Monday, 10 o'clock, show up, half an hour. What? He comes and talks to the boss. Boss says either, no, that's not a good idea, or, let me think about it. And he will convene his team and say, this is the idea that came from one of our engineers, and what do you think? If they say, yes, it's a good idea, he will call that engineer and tell him, I give you 5 rooms in the end of the corridor, I give you 7 engineers, start working, you get $1 million per year, report to me every quarter, come back at the end of the year, tell me what happened. And if they are successful, and in many cases they are successful, then what happens is that they open a new subsidiary, and the engineer is a partner. Aha. Now they have incentives to invent something, and go directly to the boss. Right? And so by doing so, the RAD company is an umbrella now with, I don't know, hundreds of links to small companies and so on. But this creates a larger web, because if they open a subsidiary, then there is a third company that wants to invest in that subsidiary. Now, this main company is linked to that company, but that subsidiary creates a huge web of collaboration among companies who do basically the same, are active in the same area. Right? And it has to do with the culture. Right? Can you talk to the big boss? That's all. Okay. Now, how can we make more young people like engineering and science? Well, we have to introduce science to young people. I believe that if we introduce science to very young people, they will like science. If they will understand the world around them, understand what is light, understand what is water, understand what are plants, understand what is fauna, flora, if they open their eyes and look around, and they will be told that this is science, and science is so wonderful, I believe that if you teach young children, then they will want to become scientists in their future. And this makes a big difference. So, what age should we start teaching science? They asked me once on a radio broadcast, and I said, what age? In the kindergarten. They said, kindergarten? Science? I said, of course. Kindergarten children are very, very bright. They have wonderful minds. A child who is 1 year old doesn't speak. When he's 2 years old, he doesn't stop speaking. A child learns Chinese in 1 year. I know to say 4 words in Chinese, and it took me 4 years to learn that. Right? And a child in 1 year. So the minds are fantastic. They can understand. But you have to know how to teach them and to tell them that science is wonderful. Science is wonderful, science is wonderful. This is science, this is science, this is science. I have 2 programs in Israel. One to teach science to kindergarten children in Haifa, my hometown. 60 kindergarten children study science in Haifa. This is a project with the mayor of Haifa, Yona Yahav, and we do it together, and it's a pilot that's running for 2 years now, 60 kindergartens. And the other thing is a program on television that I started. It's called To Be a Scientist with Professor Dan. In Hebrew, it rhymes, Liot Mad'an, in Professor Dan. And there, they created a laboratory for me on the stage. And the people there bring 3 children, age 6, to the stage. And we discuss science, real science. No nonsense. And no hocus pocus, liquid nitrogen and bubbles and no. Real science that they can understand, and they do. And many people watch it on television in Israel. It was running continuously for a long time. Now they do it only intermittently every now and then. So this can be done everywhere. So this is introducing to kindergarten, and this is a television program. This is the book Startup Nation, and describes how Israel became a startup nation over a period of time. And I know that it started really in the late 80s, in the beginning of the 90s, and now it's really a model to the world how you can change a country from being relying on services and agriculture to relying on technological entrepreneurship. And this is why Israel has GDP per capita similar, by the way, to South Korea, but for totally different reasons. They have only big industries, and this is a different talk, and we have mainly startups. And every given moment in Israel, there are about 5,000 startups operating in the country. And the spirit of entrepreneurship is everywhere. Thank you very much. This is my number 9 grandson. I have 10 of them. Thank you very much.